And so you think that you're going to have to do everything yourself for as long as possible. And that is not true. Hey, ambitious dentist, welcome to Start Your Dental Practice, the show for existing and aspiring dentists to take your dental practice to the highest possible level. I'm your host, Jonathan Van Horn, CPA and ABV, founder of dentistmetrics.com. In every episode, we aim to demystify the how to start a dental practice problem by bringing on world-class dentists, influencers, and consultants in the dental industry to pick their brain about how to get past the barriers involved from going from no practice to being a practice owner to owning your own successful dental practice. Hello, ambitious dentist. So today is a very, very special day, and I'm really excited about it. As you may have noticed, we have had a bit of a delay since the last episode. Well, the reason is because the last episode was episode number 99. That means that this one is episode 100. That's right. We are hitting the 100 mark, the century note. We are officially at 100. We've also hit over 100,000 downloads on iTunes. We've had just a crazy, crazy run over the past 2.5, 3 years. I am beyond happy with all that has came out of the Start Your Dental Practice podcast. We've had so many people, so many of you guys have reached out to us and told me your stories about becoming a dental practice owner and the challenges that you were facing and how the podcast helped you get over it, and just all of the really cool stories and motivation and the appreciation that you guys have given me over the past couple of years has been incredibly appreciated. And I love you guys. I really appreciate it. So when I was trying to think about what to do on the 100th episode, I kept getting this, paralysis by analysis. I just kept thinking, what is the best way to kick off episode 100? And, I felt like really it's the best thing for me to be able to do is give you a little bit of a retrospective, let you know a little bit about, what I think about this whole podcasting game and what I've learned over the last couple of years. And so that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to be sharing with you the top 7 lessons I've learned being a dental podcast host over the past 2 years. And, these are not lessons that are only out there to help out podcasters. These are 7 lessons that will help you in every step of your business and your entrepreneurial journey. So without further ado, here we go. These are the 7 lessons I've learned from being a podcast host and starting a podcast. Lesson number 1, you have to start somewhere. So if you guys know me, just like episode 100, it took me a while to get it going because I overthought it. I just kept thinking, we got to get this thing perfect. We got to get this thing perfect. We got to get this thing perfect. And to be honest, I have always been that way. Like I've always been an over preparer, if you will. Like I love preparing. I almost love preparing more than the doing sometimes, just because I like to game plan things and I like to theorize and strategize and optimize, minimize and maximize all the different things that I can to be able to be as really good as I can. And I try to think back, what made me get over that, and I really can't remember how I got over it. I just kept making moves. I just kept going forward. I just kept doing the next thing. And I didn't let the little things drag me down. So for example, our artwork on the podcast, it's literally just like an image from PowerPoint or something like that that's just copied or printed off of there. It's not the most detailed, Photoshop type image that's going to grab people's attention, or, it's going to make sure that if someone's scrolling through that they're going to click on my podcast. I could have way overthought that, but literally I just said, hey, I like blues and greens, and the name of the thing is start your dental practice, have Dentist Metrics logo up there, and just get it to me. And literally the first thing they sent to me, I said okay to. The music, I have a team that helps me produce this podcast. I couldn't do it without them. And the guy sent me like 3 different clips of different types of music that sounded good, and I just picked the one that I liked the most. There was no, real like thought going into any of those things because I just wanted to get going. I wanted to get started. I've told everyone that the reason this podcast got started was because I was talking to other people about dentistry and I wanted to record it and share it with other people. And that was what was important to me. Was getting the message out there. It wasn't anything else. It wasn't about being the most polished podcast or anything like that. It was just getting it out there. And so, if I had stopped at any point in time, I would have greatly increased my chances of not moving forward anymore. So for example, if I would have said, hey, I don't like this logo, let's try and get it taken care of. And I had to wait for a week for it to be revised, then that's a week for me to start letting self-doubt get in there. It's a week for letting me, come up with a reason why I can't do it. It's a week for me to find distractions. It's a week for me to just come up with a million excuses. And so you've got to start somewhere, guys. You have to have the courage to be able to move forward. And the reason for doing what you're doing has to be stronger than the fear that comes with moving forward. It just has to. You have to be motivated. So that's lesson number 1. You 100% have to start somewhere, move forward, just take a step, and then just don't stop. Just keep taking steps. So lesson number 2. Lesson number 2 is that you can always do better. So like I said, I got everything off the ground, on the podcast, and I got things going. And for a long time, I just kind of just went with what was working. And if something didn't work, we stopped doing it. If something did work, we kept doing it. And that is just self-improvement. That's just continuing to do better. At the beginning, I listened to all the podcasts over and over again. I took feedback from everyone. I think I even had for the first 40 or 50 episodes, I think we had like a me saying, please tell me what I'm doing wrong because I want to know, I want you to tell me what I'm doing wrong so I can get better because I want to be better. And I know a lot of people probably have been like, why would you ask people to tell you that you're doing bad? And it wasn't that. It was just, I wanted feedback. Feedback is fantastic. It allows you to do so much in business and it allows you to become way better. So if you listen to an episode now versus an episode back then, you can definitely tell a difference. And, probably how clearly I speak, I would assume, is a bit. I would assume I ask better questions now. I'm more confident on the recordings. And, I have more fun with it now just because I continue to try and do better. And I just kept doing that over and over and over again. Tip number 3, you are only as good as your team. This is one that I've learned from both the fact that I've been doing this for a couple of years in the podcast world, as well as I've increased my business has grown. My personal business, the Dentist Metrics CPA firm, has grown so much, as well as the fact that I see this from all of my clients, as well as the people I talk to in the industry. That is it's one of the most cliche, idioms, if you will, that are out there, that you're only as good as your team, you're only as strong as your weakest link, etc. But it's so true. It is 100% the most important thing that goes on inside of the dental world. Whether it be, or any business for that matter, any service-based business, it's so important that whomever is coming through your process feels appreciated, that you do a high quality of work for them, and you're really good at taking care of that person. Doesn't matter if you're doing dentistry or selling shoes. It's the same thing. Your team is incredibly important, and it's something that I didn't appreciate as much as I do now, because I feel like I've always had a very math-based brain. Now, that doesn't mean like I'm sitting over here like contemplating discrete math and coming up with, new physics equations to explain, why the moon is an inch one way versus the 60 years ago. I'm not doing that. That's not what I'm saying about math-based brand. I'm saying I'm just very binary a lot of the times. Like it's like, there's a best way and a worst way is the way I've always kind of viewed things. And I thought that whenever I got into the dental world and I've talked about this on the podcast, I thought when you got into the dental world that I could just basically map out like the optimal dental practice for people to say, okay, you've got to be able to see this many patients in a day. You got to be able to get them through in this amount of time. And then you've got to also, do this many services and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, this many team members, yada, yada, yada. And that you could, look at your overhead and look at your revenue. And then that is how you would dictate if you're going to be able to do well or not and where to focus your energies. And while that last segment is a bit true, the only way any of that works is if you have a fantastic team that keeps you going forward. And in order to have a great team, you've also got to have a great leader. It's probably going to be you as the dental practice owner. It might not be. It might be some type of an office manager or consultant, but more than likely, it's going to end up being you. So that's the third lesson. You're only as good as your team. Really important one. Again, sounds cliche, but man, is it important. Number 4, communication skills are vital. They are so important to be able to communicate well. I always thought, why would I need to communicate with people? I know how to speak English. I know how to talk to people. I know how to, shake someone's hand. But there's a lot of people out there that don't know how to do that very well. Communication skills are so, so vital. And it's not just the communication piece. It's not just getting a message across and back, creating that feedback or feedback loop of, hi, I'm saying something to you. Please say something back to me. In business, you have to be able to effectively communicate what it is you're delivering to people. You have to set expectations. You have to be able to, we'll get into that a little bit more in a minute, but you've got to be able to, outline some sometimes very complex situations to people and be able to get that across effectively. So it's not just speaking with someone. It's not just a communication piece. It's not just talking. That's what I'm saying. It is actually delivering a message, which is very different. And the way in which you do that is very different. So for example, sometimes people may respond better to really slow speech when explaining something. And some people probably want to know a lot more about it and have you speak to them really fast about, XYZ and all these other things. The way in which you say things is very important. And the ability to communicate with people is paramount to the success of any service-based business or any business that has sales, basically. You've probably heard me on the podcast say that I don't really like the term sales in dentistry. And it's true. I don't like that term. But communication is effectively sales. Because if you think about it, dentists or patients are coming to you guys with a problem. They're either coming to you with a problem or to help prevent a problem. One of the two at the core of its function of the patient to dentist relationship. And if you can't get on that person's level and communicate with them what the problem actually is, because they may have some head trash of what they think the problem is, and you've got to convince them it's something else, or whatever the solution is the best solution. And communicating that, giving them the answer to their problem is what they want. Like they want the answer, but they also want to be the person there's a saying that Dr. Anthony Gonzalez had on Facebook the other day that was fantastic. It said people don't want to be sold to, people want to buy. And I thought that was a fantastic quote that effectively says that people want to come up with that it's the best thing for them on their own. They don't want it shoved down their throat. So in order to be able to do that, it's this very artful dance of being able to communicate with these people and being able to effectively communicate what's best for them to either, 1, solve their problem, or 2, prevent that problem from occurring in the future. And if you can do that, you're going to go really far in the world of dentistry, in any business really, because that is sales at its core. And it's one of those things that has a dirty connotation in a lot of industries, but you could almost interchange the word sales with communicating better. Lesson number 5, you have to set clear expectations. If you don't set clear expectations with your staff or with your patients or with your vendors or with your family or with your kids, man, you're going to have a hard time. That is to me almost the definition of leadership, is setting an expectation and then holding someone accountable for it, right? So, for example, one of the things that we do in my business now is that every week we have a meeting. Every single week we talk about what we did the last week, what goals we accomplished over the prior week, and then what our goals are for the next week. And in that meeting, I say, sometimes I'll have to bring people back on track, because we also have a quarterly meeting every quarter. And in the quarterly meeting, we kind of outline as a company where we want to get to. And then each person has their own responsibilities in my company to do projects to get to that, whatever goal it is. And so what we'll do is every week we go over what our goals were for the prior week. What tiny steps did we get to reach that quarterly goal? And sometimes I'll have to say, okay, this is what our quarterly goal is. These are some of the projects you had to head up. You're wanting to focus on that one. I get it. But based off of, the time of the year, what tax season is going to be, what our deadlines are going to be, we need you to focus on this one right now. And, letting people know that helps them. That doesn't hurt them. That's not stepping on people's feet. That's just letting them know that, hey, you're 100% doing your job, but this is what our expectation is of you, because this is what our clients are expecting of us. And then, once, every week we see if they've done a good job, if they've kept up with it, if they've succeeded in whatever their weekly goals are. That's accountability. They're being held accountable to everyone else in my company because everybody's doing it. Everybody's saying, I'm doing it. And you don't want to be the guy, the girl, or whomever that says, I didn't do what I thought I was going to do the last week. So it's a really good way to get people moving forward and keeping what you've told them to do in their mind. So set expectations, clear expectations. That is a crux. That is like the most important thing of leadership. So set clear expectations. Tip number 5, maybe the most important one. Number 6, it is not always going to be easy. You don't know how many times I've had potential interviewees email me begging to be on this show. And it is really annoying to the point of almost, it's just spam, right? And that's fairly simple, but the counter to that is sometimes it's hard to find really good guests. And I have to weigh this personal, conflict in my head of, do I just get something out there? Because those people that are spamming me, I could email them and in a day I'd have a new guest. And I have to weigh that versus what you guys actually need to hear and want to hear. And it's not always easy. You have to pick the one that is the right decision. And for me, it was, okay, we just won't have an episode this week. I know that's going to hurt next week's downloads. And I know that keeps me out of y'all's, earbuds, but I'm going to do that because that's what's best for you guys. Not necessarily what's best for the podcast, but it's best for you guys. And that's just it. And that's in general in business. That's the case. It's not always easy. You got to get up, grind, kick some butt every day, get the things done that you need to get done, and move forward. And it's not always easy to do that. Me in particular, like I said in the beginning, I am a constant planner. I love planning, but it's hard for me to move forward sometimes. And that is, a personal issue that I have, but you've got to acknowledge sometimes it's not easy, and sometimes you got to do things you don't want to do. Lesson number 7, you have to be willing to delegate in your business. When I was thinking about this last one, it brought me back to the first tip, which was you have to start somewhere. And I don't think I would have gotten this podcast off the ground if it wasn't for the team that helps produce this. And I wouldn't have gotten the podcast up and running if I hadn't delegated to them, because they get it on iTunes. They help me get the emails together. They help me get the posts together on the website. They help do some of the social media stuff. And if I didn't have them there to be able to help me do all that stuff, I would get so bogged down because I've got another business to run. And so I have to delegate to them. And that is one of the weirdest leadership tactics that there is. A lot of us like to think of leaders as someone who's leading the battle, who's charging the battle head first, and they're at the front of the line. And that's a thing, like that's obviously a thing, but that person that's in front of the line, they're not doing all the fighting by themselves. They don't shoot every weapon themselves. They've got to delegate, and they've got to have other people around them to help them do things. And many business owners fall into this trap of wanting to do everything themselves because they think no one will do this with as much heart as I will, because I'm the one who benefits the most. And so you think that you're going to have to do everything yourself for as long as possible, and that is not true. You have to be willing to delegate in your business. You have to be willing to delegate and outsource and let other people do things, and they're going to fail sometimes and it's going to stink, but that means you've got a training opportunity if that happens to be able to train them up or to create some type of training material in your business and practice so that you can make sure that doesn't happen again. And it may still happen again, but you can train around that. You can game plan around that. You can fix that afterwards, as long as it's not, just earth shattering. One of the things that I've always said, since the beginning of this podcast is that business is all about handling the small mistakes and avoiding the big mistakes. So as long as you're not like letting your, assistants do all of the dentistry, from diagnosis to completion, then you're going to be okay for the most part inside of dentistry, as long as you're strong clinically and everything else. But you have to be willing to delegate to that team. Your front office has to be very well trained. They have to do a very good job. Your assistants have to be very well trained to help you get your restorative up and running. Your hygienists have to be very well trained. And you've got to be able to give them things to do and be able to trust that they're going to do it. So set those expectations, hold them accountable, delegate as much as possible so that you as a business owner and you as a business can succeed. And I'm a big believer in outsourcing things. Like I'm a big believer in not filling up your head with a ton of mental crap, if you will. Because, man, I've got 2 young kids, and there are people out there that have way more kids than that I don't know how they do it. Like my wife is a stay-at-home mom, and she works her butt off every single day. When I get home from work, it's like I hit the ground running, trying to take care of the kids. And by the time I hit my head against that pillow at night, I am beat. And I have nothing left in my head for so many people. And I feel like I do a pretty good job of getting things off of my plate. If I were to try and take everything on, my mental bandwidth would be so beaten up and just decrepit, because it would not have anything left. I would just be this frail old man that has no idea what's going on because I'm so stuck with all the things going on. And it's really strange that, the human mind can only handle so much stuff. Even if it's something not super interesting, we see so much information nowadays that everything gets kind of clogged up there at some point. And so you've got to be willing to let other people do things. You got to be willing to outsource different items to people so that you can clear up your mental space for other things. And that doesn't only apply to you as the business owner. That also applies to the rest of your team. I'm a big believer that dental practices should be focused on the patient and the patient experience and doing the dentistry and getting paid for the dentistry. Outside of that, I don't think that the dental office should be worrying about too much more. Everything else can be handled by professionals outside of the practice that can help you out a lot, and usually pretty cost effectively. So I'm a big believer in that, and I see a lot of really, really successful practices that they operate off of that philosophy, and they just kill it. So those are the 7 lessons. The 7 lessons, again, to recap, were: number 1, you have to start somewhere. Number 2, you can always do better. Number 3, you're only as good as your team. Number 4, communication skills are incredibly important. Number 5, you have to set clear expectations with everyone. Number 6, it's not always going to be easy. Number 7, you have to be willing to delegate and outsource in your business. So those are the 7 lessons I have learned over the last 2 years of running this podcast, running this dental CPA firm, living, eating, breathing, sleeping, drinking every bit of dentistry the last 4.5 years, to be honest with you. Those are some of the best lessons I've learned for you guys that I want you guys to take home and think about, because I get all these questions all the time about things that I would have you focus on before you become a practice owners. And a lot of those lessons are the things I would tell you to focus on. Focusing on, setting a self-awareness that those 7 items I just gave you are true, and start thinking about mentally how you're going to, approach every day with those different tips in mind. So, I would have loved episode 100 to have been some big, giant, blowout, guest-driven fest of me contacting every single podcast guest I've had over the past year, and maybe getting like a bunch of testimonials from all of you guys about how the podcast has impacted your lives, or something similar like that, and then play it over the air. And I even thought about going through and reading all the emails that I've received over the past couple of years, and there's probably hundreds of them. And I just said, you know what, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to tell you guys the 7 most important lessons that I can, without a doubt, say that I've learned over the last couple of years. So thank you guys for this amazing journey that we've been on with Start Your Dental Practice podcast. Thank you so much for being a listener. I appreciate each and every one of you. If you'd like to contact me sometime, tell me how the podcast has impacted your life, or just to say hi, my email is Jonathan, my first name, JONATHAN, at dentistmetrics.com. So it's DENTISTMETRICS.com. I appreciate every single one of you out there. Thank you for being a part of the Start Your Dental Practice family and being an ambitious dentist. I know that you guys have the ability to go out and do great things. I know a lot of you already have. So whether you're a new listener or an old listener, again, thank you guys so much. And so that's it for today, Ambitious Dentist. Again, I'm Jonathan Van Horn, CPA and ABV. I'll see you next week with another world-class practice owner or consultant that will help you start your very own dental practice.